Good day, everyone. This is the pre-recorded report entitled Sterilization. This is prepared by Biron, Bueno, Cabilan, Sinon, Hamero Arnel, Lebron, and Modelo. Without further ado, let's proceed in the lesson proper.
Sterilization. Sterilization refers to the procedure performed to stop fertility permanently in all human beings. So that means that fertilization is the process that destroys or eliminates all forms of microbial life and is carried out in healthcare facilities by physical or chemical method. Sterilization is a permanent method or a process that helps us controls the birth mass production. Fertilization takes place when man's sperm reaches and joins the eggs released from the ovary of the woman. Sterilization interrupts this process permanently, either by preventing the release of sperm or by stopping fertilization by blocking the fallopian tube. It states that fertilization occurs when a sperm fuses with a female apt during intercourse and further forms an egg that gets implanted in uterus of the female. But with the help of sterilization, it interrupts the process permanently and it will stop the process of forming a fertilized egg. Now let's proceed for the sterilization process or procedure for male and female. Operations on women are commonly called ligation, as the procedure aims to occlude or ligate the fallopian tube. So ligation is also called as tubal ligation, is a surgical procedure for female sterilization in which the fallopian tubes are permanently blocked, clipped, or removed. This prevents the fertilization of eggs by sperms and thus the implantation of a fertilized eggs. Tubal ligation is considered as permanent method of sterilization and birth control. Now for male sterilization, on the other hand, is achieved by the operation of vasectomy, cutting or ligating on both sides the vas deferens, which transports sperms from the testicle to the penis. Now vasectomy or vasoligation is an elective surgical procedure for the male sterilization or permanent contraception. During the procedure, the male vasa deferentia are cut and tied or sealed so as to prevent sperm from entering into the urethra and thereby prevent fertilization of a female through sexual intercourse.
Sterilization and morality. Christianity and science have been considering their beliefs in sterilization for a long time. Still, many people stand by their own views and support what they believe in. According to Christianity's teaching, fecundity is good, a gift, and the end of marriage. By giving life, spouses participate in God's fatherhood. This pertains to the fact that sexual intercourse has only two functions, and these are unitive and procreative. Therefore, each act could result in the creation of life, and not using contraception is a way of allowing God to decide whether conception will take place. Natural family planning is a church-approved method. Sterilization is a contraception that the church automatically disregards because it is not morally right. There are two distinctions about sterilization that define its morality.
First is the direct sterilization. Direct sterilization is an act of mutilation. It means that the purpose of this procedure is to destroy the normal functioning of a healthy organ so as to prevent the future conception of children. Examples of this type of distinction in sterilization, just like what was mentioned earlier, are vasectomy for a man and ligation of the fallopian tubes for a woman. This was considered the most effective and least dangerous method of permanent sterilization. This is an example, pictures of vasectomy and ligation. As you can see, in the female reproductive organ, there is something that blocks the fertile egg and the fallopian tube. It is what we call the ligation or tubectomy. In men, the vas deferens was tied or cut so that the semen or sperm couldn't come out, and that is where the vasectomy was completed. But the church disapproves direct sterilization because it separates unnaturally the dual purpose of the marital act, contradicts the nature of man and woman. Coercive or forcible sterilization practices are unethical and should never be performed. The second is the indirect sterilization. Indirect sterilization's direct intention is the act of removing or repairing a diseased organ, such as through therapy or surgery. Unfortunately, such a surgery or therapy may indirectly result in the person being sterilized. For example, if a woman is diagnosed with a cancerous uterus, performing a hysterectomy is perfectly legitimate and moral. But the indirect effect of this distinction is that the woman will be rendered sterile and never be able to bear children again. Though it is still morally permissible, always keep in mind that to be morally right, the operation or protocol must be truly therapeutic in character and arise from a real pathological need.
Case presentation. Mrs. A is a 35 years old woman, has had 3 children, and does not want any more children. She and her husband are considering permanent birth control options and are considering sterilization. Mrs. A has a history of complications during childbirth and is concerned about the risk associated with future pregnancies. After discussing their options with their healthcare provider, Mrs. A and her husband decided to undergo sterilization. Mrs. A undergoes a laparoscopic tubal ligation, which is minimally invasive surgical procedure that cuts or seals the fallopian tubes, preventing eggs from traveling from the ovaries to the uterus. After the procedure, Mrs. A healthcare provider advises her that she will no longer be able to have children in the future. She will need to consider other options such as adaptation or in vitro fertilization. Mrs. A is pleased with her decision and feels that it is the best option for her and her family. She is relieved that she will no longer have to worry about the risk associated with future pregnancies and is happy to be able to focus on raising her 3 children without the added stress of worrying about birth control. In this case, sterilization was a morally permissible option for Mrs. A and her husband because it was done to prevent the risk associated with future pregnancies and was not done as a means of contraception or population control. The intention behind the procedure was to protect the health and well-being of Mrs. A and her family, and not to prevent the possibility of new life.
This is our 3 questions. Number 1, why is sterilization considered an intrinsically evil act? Number 2, what are the consequences of intentionally disregarding the church teaching on contraception and sterilization? Number 3, is sterilization considered ethical or unethical? That would be all for our presentation. Thank you for listening.